So, April 24th of this year marked the 30th anniversary of Aphex Twin's I Care Because You Do. And while we didn't get any super fancy schmancy high profile re-release like we did with Selected Ambient Works Volume 2, I'd say we still got something pretty cool, as We Care Because You Should also came out that day. Now, what is it? I'll explain. So this all starts with Brain Dance News, which is, I guess, a really huge collaborative brain dance music project led by the really cool person that is Greystar. And ever since 2015, a bunch of Aphex Twin and some Audacre remix and cover projects have come out under this name. Now if you go to the Bandcamp page, you can see the first few albums were pretty low profile. However, the first big one I'd say was We Care Because You Should. Not the one that released this year, the one that released in 2017. I promise it makes sense. This one from 2017 stood out from all the other ones before because it was good. Great even in parts, and was most of all actually pretty dang interesting. There's a lot of great remixes on this one. Biggest highlight obviously being the Death Grips mashup. Just beautiful stuff, really. However, my story with this whole project doesn't start there. Instead, it starts in 2019 with the releases of Fanalords and r/Cyro. Great names. These were the first albums from Brain Dance News that I actually found out about and listened to, and there's a lot of cuts in there that, have just become constant repeats over the years. But it wasn't just the fact that, I liked these two releases. It was also the fact that in 2019, I had recently just started making music. Not good music, mind you, but I started making music. And I found out about these projects and that the next one was just free for anyone to join. And I thought, might as well. Yeah, basically ever since I've been contributing to every Aphex Twin release that has come out under Brain Dance News. I originally joined for their Dorks album, which took forever to come out. Yeah, it was announced in 2019, it didn't come out until 2021, so it took quite a while. I also contributed to Moving On, which is a smaller release that was just a few covers of stuff from the On EP. Not On remixes, just On. And what was notable about that one is that I kind of led the efforts for making it. I contributed tracks to both, and they're both mediocre at best. I'd say go back to listen to see for yourself, but don't. Listen to the other people's stuff, but don't listen to mine, please. Yeah, so those projects kind of happened, and over the years, it's just been a very low profile thing. And that was until the Selected Ambient Works 85 to 92 rework was announced. And I don't know, something about this one just felt a lot different. A lot more people were involved than in the other ones. It felt a lot more coherent, and I made a good song for it, with fucking crazy shit, I know. Another really cool thing about it was the album cover, which I won't say I created it, but I had a big role in its creation. I came up with the idea for the album cover. Basically, the concept for it was that I'd get a shit ton of people to draw the Aphex Twin logo and then just kind of superimpose it all on top of each other to create a very weird, ghostly looking thingy. So yeah, I basically led all the efforts to get a bunch of people to draw the logo. I think I got 20-ish at the end, and then Greystar made it look good. But yeah, I mean, even though it took another seeming eternity to come out, it's just really an astounding project. A lot of amazing songs, and as I said, it's coherent. While the other stuff was good, to call it something that sounds like it should be on the same album is kind of a stretch. Once again, we had a Death Grips mashup on one of these albums, okay? It wasn't made to be a coherent thing. The album was received really well when it came out, too. Like, a lot of people really loved it. I love it, of course. So then after that, I think 3 days after Selected Ambient Reworks came out, We Care Because You Should, the second one, was officially announced, and it was going to release on the 30th anniversary of I Care Because You Do's release. When it comes to these reworks, when they're in development, I don't pay too much attention to what other people are doing, as I usually focus on my contribution. However, the feeling in the server, because this is all being done in the Discord server, definitely felt different. I think a lot of the good vibes and the chemistry from Selected Ambient Reworks 16 to 24 really carried over and built off of itself. And yeah, I think that's all the introduction I really need to do, so let's talk about it. Now, I'm not going to go over every single track on this album, because in the end, it was 4 fucking hours long. So I think I will just focus on what I think are the big highlights from this album, which, spoiler alert, there are a lot of highlights in my opinion. I'm not going to go over every track, but don't confuse me not talking about a song for me disliking it. There are tracks that I would say I dislike from this album. That said, I also won't really talk about those tracks I dislike and why I dislike them, because let's be honest here, I don't really want to ruin someone's entire week by putting them on blast in front of 100-ish people. But I will be honest, this album isn't perfect. If you want to know more specifics as to why that is, you can just ask me on Discord or something like that. But as I said, there's a lot of highlights on here by a lot of very creative individuals, and I think I'd like to devote this time to talking about those. So the first track is Next Heap with Red FGG's Intro, which is actually the first track from the 2017 compilation. It's a really short reworking of Next Heap With that works really well for setting a cool and foreboding tone. Once again, it's really short, so it's not the craziest thing ever, but it works very well as a short intro. Things get fucking crazy though with Alberto Balsam Dead Again punk cover featuring Greystar. So if you know anything about the Selected Ambient Reworks 16 to 24 compilation, you know that the first track was a punk cover of Xtal. It's really great, and Dead Again, the person who made that, is doing yet another fucking banger of a punk cover. I will say it is hard to pick a favorite between them, because I think Xtal is it just works better as a punk song than Alberto Balsam. However, this Alberto Balsam cover just sounds so much better than the Xtal one. As much as I love the Xtal one, I will say the mixing, the sound of the guitars, kinda off. Hard to really put my finger on it, but it does sound kinda off, as enjoyable as it is. But this Alberto Balsam one just sounds absolutely amazing. Also, I really like some of the touch-ups by Greystar, especially how it kinda sounds like football chants. There's also Come On You Slags, Lane Arcane's Quiet Freedom mix, which is just fucking insane. Like, there's a wall of sound, and then there's just walls of sound. This track has walls of sound. It's so fucking crazy. And, I also love the voice samples, but really, this track just, slaps you across the face. Slaps you across the face again, drowns you in a bathtub, and then throws your corpse out the window. It's like that. Another highlight from the first disc is The Stars Mean to Go On, the Warp mix. I've said before, Stars You Mean to Go On is not really a track I like all too well, and the reason why I like this one is because I just think it's a huge improvement on the original. Oh, there's also my remix, which I have a lot to say. As I said before, some of the remixes I've contributed to these projects in the past, I'm not the fondest of. And the one I contributed to Select and Ambient Reworks was I. It was put at the very end of the first disc. And not only is it a really great song, like I am willing to say I am really proud of how it turned out. And then it's kind of the same thing with this one. I'd say I'm even more proud of how this one turned out, my remix of Wet Tip Hen Axe, than I would say even the I one. Now, why did I choose Wet Tip Hen Axe? To be completely honest, well, I don't hate the original. I think it's probably the one track on I Care Because You Do that is the least impactful. And I actually did something a bit different with making this song. Usually when I make music, I focus on the composition and sound design first, and then I kind of go on to the mixing later. But for this one, I focus purely on the composition first, and then on the sound design. And basically what I did is that I just used a bunch of placeholder elements. That resulted in a demo that, I mean, it sounds pretty different from the final product, like dramatically so. I used a lot of pianos as placeholders, and while I do think what I ended up using was a lot better, I do honestly kind of think the pianos do have a bit of their own dramatic charm. When this album originally came out, it was done as a premiere on YouTube, and I gotta say my favorite moment of the entire premiere was when people thought that the drone section in the middle of the song was a transition to another song. That was pretty funny. There's Wax Nip Enry's rework. I will say it's not my favorite, however, it made for another very memorable moment during the premiere, because it starts out sounding like a Ventolin remix, and then it surprisingly turns into a Wax the Nip remix. Like, it's got Wax the Nip's ambience, but with Ventolin percussion. It's a very weird mashup. And I have to mention Cowcut is a twin Turson Drums 1, which is another track like the intro that came from the original 2017 version of this album, although now it's remastered, and it's always been a favorite of mine ever since I first listened to the original album. It's not very much a Cowcut is a twin remix, but a completely new track made from elements of its percussion, and I mean, it's just fucking awesome. Like, it's some top tier, like, Rocky training montage music. It's great. The FLX acid mix of Winding Road definitely deserves a mention for many reasons, but I mean, just the alright sample. The whole remix is just a huge improvement over the original Winding Road, in my opinion, not just because of the alright sample, but also because of just how incredibly punchy the acid is. It really gets you moving. And I gotta mention Zeki's all-nighter mix of Pearls because of just one fact. Apparently, it was made in an hour. It's not the type of track you can tell is made in an hour. It sounds like it was made in like 10-20 hours. It sounds amazing. Like, there's even vocals on this track. How the fuck was this made in an hour? It has these heavenly vocals and just a heavenly vibe all around. It's not like they heavily relied on the original either, because it's its own original track really, with just a few bits of pearls here and there. And I'm going to take a quick second to shout out all the remixes of Vaz Deferens, because Vaz Deferens is also a track like Stars You Mean to Go On that I do not care for in its original form, so I do have to give a shout out to all the versions of it on this album that I think are all huge improvements over the original. There's Emery's version of it, which is just, it goes really hard and it's bouncy as hell. There's the Warp mix of it, which it's really repetitive, but it's also another banger. And, you know, the pads are great too. There's Grin Fox's Coolin' mix too, which is from 2017. It's just all around really well made. It's really chill and laid back, although I wish it was longer. It's pretty short. Another track that got quite the reaction during the premiere was the Sigmatis Footwork remix of Merry Maidens, which is a footwork remix of Merry Maidens. Which I guess now that I say it doesn't really sound all that crazy, but I mean, just like, who picks up Merry Maidens and like, you know what, I'm gonna make a footwork remix of this. It's not my favorite track, but I mean, just like, that was not my bingo card. Definitely give it a listen just for the novelty of it. Or Dollbones' rework of Analog Bubble Bath 5 B3 needs mention, just because, I mean, Analog Bubble Bath 5 track 8 is already just a fucking astounding song, so I mean, any track to remake it is already like bound to also be great. This one sticks pretty close to the original, but really buffs up its percussion and just kind of messes around with it. It has fun. PNCKS, which made one of my favorite tracks from Selected Ambient Reworks 16 to 24, returns with 2 remixes of Come On You Slags. The first one is probably the most similar song to my own on this one. It's a really dramatic piano-led piece, really nice atmosphere on this one. But then there's an awesome transition into an atmospheric house piece that also sounds really cool. Next up, there's Acrid Avid Guitar Reshred, the Janie interface version, which is a remix of a track from the 2017 version. I think that's the only one of those that we have here, a remix of a 2017 track instead of just a remaster. This one's pretty cool. It has a nice balance of silly and sad, which is always great. I don't know, I'm not good at explaining things. It just has a really nice, down-to-earth vibe to it that I really connect with. Marshall Applewhite's cover of Constellum is interesting, as it's pretty repetitive, but it just scratches an itch for me. The percussion goes pretty hard, and there's that vocal sample that is really weird, but I don't know, it just scratches an itch for me. It really has the vibe of waking up in a dark alley with no recollection as to who you are. Next up, there is Bit Quicker Bird Whistle Poor Martha's Vicken Sport Sesh, which I believe is by Poor Martha, the person who made one of my favorite tracks from Fanalords in Step Through. Just fucking amazing song. And for a remix of Bird Whistle of all things, this one is pretty wild. I have notes for every track, and literally one of them is just what the fuck is going on. Like, it starts off as like a heavily filtered, kind of distorted version of Bird Whistle, but then it just goes off into a completely new direction. The Internet Mowgli Door Slam mix of Calcutta as a Twin is another pretty neat track. It does a lot of things pretty well. It's really melancholy. It has, you know, some nice chiptune elements. However, the best part of it is easily where it gets its name. The use of the door slam in the intro from Calcutta as a Twin is a core part of this track's percussion. It sounds satisfying as fuck. There's also the first of two remixes by Evangelion_guy in their version of Alberto Balsam. I like this one because it sounds like Mum. Anything that sounds like Mum, especially in the nostalgia department, is automatically a gem. Also, the synths are just super fucking lush. Like, my god.
One of my favorites. And you know why?
I gotta say though, there's been a lot of crazy ideas on this album so far. However, I gotta say the craziest take is Evangelion Guys' ambient mix of Merry Maidens. This remix is so special because it's a 10-minute long space ambient remix of Merry Maidens. Once again, I don't really know how you look at a track like Merry Maidens and say like, oh, okay, well, 10 minutes, spacey vibes, that should do the trick. Like, I wish I was this creative. The album closes though on Dober J's cover of Acrid Avid Jam Shred, specifically the guitar version. I mentioned it earlier when I said that there was a remix of a 2017 track, and this is basically just that 2017 track, although once again it's remastered, it sounds a lot better. It doesn't really sound much like Acrid Avid Jam Shred, however, it is just a really nice guitar piece. If you like acoustic guitar songs with a really nice fall vibe, then you'll like this. And also, it just works as a very nice homey, kind of bittersweet closer to the whole project. However, I haven't even talked about my two most favorite tracks yet. These are what I think are the highlights from this album that anyone watching this should listen to. If you don't listen to anything from this video that I've mentioned so far in full, please listen to these two. And these two tracks that I think are so special are both of the Secanda remixes. Now, I do have to be honest, I do sound a bit biased because Secanda is already my favorite Aphex Twin track. It's at least in the top 3 for my favorite songs ever made. However, think about it this way. If there's a Secanda mix that doesn't live up to the hype, me, as a huge Secanda stan, would be the first to call it out. So the fact that these two remixes were able to live up to the hype and be in the same conversation quality-wise as Secanda, I think that's a really huge achievement for both of these artists. The first one, and I think the one that I do have to say is my favorite of the two, is Crisis Engine's remix of Secanda. This one is a track from the 2017 version. It is kind of a straightforward recreation of Secanda. However, what really makes it stand out is just the fucking amazing, phenomenal violin solo that runs throughout the entirety of the track. It's not as long as the original Secanda, but it still has the same impact, I'd say. It has the same incredibly lush, heavenly vibe as Secanda. And once again, it's just an amazing solo. Just really great work by Crisis Engine. The weird thing is, this track actually introduced me to Secanda. Like, I had listened to Secanda before, and I know I did, because I know I've listened to the entirety of the SoundCloud dump before. However, it must have, for some reason, not have left any impact on me, because I literally do not remember hearing this track before I listened to Crisis Engine's version on the original We Care Because You Should album. And while, I guess, apparently young teenager me was too dumb to understand quality, this remix instantly clicked with me, instantly became a favorite of mine, and it's what caused me to go back to the original Secanda and fall in love with it so much. So I really can't thank Crisis Engine and this remix enough for that. However, I did say there's another Secanda remix, and that's Leo's Garage Band mix. And I did yap a lot about the other one. I can't really find the words to describe this one, though. All I can really say is that it's just an epic 9, almost 10-minute journey. It really feels like you go over an entire epic story in just this 9-minute runtime. It really is something special. It's incredibly well made. And Leo deserves all the props for this one. It's really an astounding piece of music from someone who's been a friend of mine for a very long time. They also made the amazing Delphium remix from Selected Ambient Reworks 16 to 24, which is my personal favorite track from that album. It's kind of a condensed version of the Secanda one. It is also just another really epic track. However, this Secanda remix just goes above and beyond. And that's pretty much it for all the tracks I'd love to give a shout out in this video. Once again, if you want me to talk more in depth about my experience with the album as a whole or just specific tracks, you can just ask me. But yeah, overall, this is a really good album. I'm not sure if I'd say it's better than Selected Ambient Reworks 16 and 24. I'd say they're both in a very similar tier, I'd say. Selected Ambient Reworks 16 and 24 is a lot more similar. It's a lot more coherent. You know, the tracks sound like they are all on the same album. And while I wouldn't say that is not true for We Care Because You Should as well, I mean, you've heard me talk about some of these tracks. Some of them are insane. However, I think the most admirable quality about, you know, this entire album is just the creativity and talent that went into every track, even the ones that didn't hit for me. There's a lot of tracks from Selected Ambient Reworks 16 to 24, especially kind of later on past disc 2, that, I'm trying to put this in a nice way, but just don't really sound all too different from the originals. A lot of straight recreations is probably the better way to say it. However, with this project, there really is nothing I'd say sounds like a straight recreation. Every track brings its own spin on the original with its own unique energy, and I think that's something that's really cool and also makes for a really entertaining 4 hours, even if it is 4 hours. There are future reworks coming up. Specifically, when talking about Aphex Twin, later this year there's going to be a Hangable Autobulb and Analord rework coming out, which are both open at the moment. Anyone can join and contribute. There's also later this year going to be a Trirepede rework coming out, which is also open, as well as a Sophie one, which I think that's next year. And as for my upcoming plans, I will say, I have made a lot of videos like this where I'm just kind of talking in the past few months. I have a feeling some of you who are not caught up may be thinking that some of the videos like my Aphex Twin, Worst to Best ranking, or my Tour de Kraftwerk videos might be out of the way, but that's not true. However, I am kind of liking some of these unscripted videos like this, the Kraftwerk Live one I made, as well as the live streams I did for the SoundCloud dump. In fact, I'm thinking I might actually just make it into a series. If you think I should just make these into a series called Windman Yaps or something, then I'll do it. But yeah, that's enough of me rambling about these reworks. If you think it's interesting, go listen to it. I definitely suggest listening to those Seconda ones. If not, that's fair, but yeah. See ya.